Welcome back, and we rejoin the women's race as they near the end of lap 1, with Mudcam following Sian Roberts off Crib Law. Sally had managed to open a 50-second lead by the top of the climb, and the 1990 National Series winner looked like she had returned to form, having had a year off for a baby. Helen Gilroy had gotten away from Sian, and the New Zealander was obviously taking over from Jill Smith by keeping an international challenge in the women's race, though the first two must have been well aware that Sian usually comes good at the end of a race. A further 45 seconds adrift in fourth was Michelle Bergstrand, who looked to be having her best mountain bike race yet. Heading onto the fire track for the climb up to Crib Law were the lead men. David and Nick looked like they would be enjoying each other's company for much of the race, but the party was broken up as David realised he picked up a puncture in the woods. And as he dismounted to fix it, Nick needed no encouragement to take advantage. Chris, who had moved up 2 positions at the beginning of the lap, now collected a third as he passed the beleaguered rally rider. And in case you're wondering, the rules of mountain biking state that a rider can have no outside assistance, not even from his teammates. So all that the spectators could do was watch as David, who was having great trouble with the wet, slimy tyres and tube, slowly slipped down the field. But he did give the cameramen a good photo opportunity. The next to pass him were Richard Thackeray, who was having a very strong ride, and John Clay, who had not been able to hold his teammate's wheel as they started the second lap. David had already lost 2 minutes by the time his second teammate, Adrian, passed him, and with the woods infested by very hungry midges, he was having no fun at all. If David could get going again soon, he would be able to work with Adrian to get himself back up there.
Eight place.
For riders such as Ed Nicol and Paul Dixon, neither of whom could normally be expected to stay with David, this was becoming a regular sight, as David had also punctured in Wales, which had cost him a possible win. Though I'm sure neither would be surprised to see him tear past them when he finally manages to get going again, and you can feel his frustration as he tries desperately not to rush what was becoming a record-breaking slow repair. Robin Seymour had moved up to 9th, just ahead of Scotland's top rider, 20-year-old Andrew Wright and specialised John Shaw, while David packs away his tools in his saddlebag. Another young rider who seems to be proving his worth in the seniors is the former World's Junior bronze medalist Paul Lazenby, who gives some encouragement to David as he remounts, having lost 12 places in over 4 minutes. Meanwhile at the front, changes were taking place. Chris had joined Nick on the way up to Crib Law, and after a minute together, Nick decided that he couldn't handle the pace and had to ease off, leaving Chris to go it alone. For the first time since 1989, Chris found himself out front in a national mountain bike race and looked determined to stay there as he edged himself 15 seconds clear of Nick by the time they crossed the burn. Nick was content to ride at his own pace, pleased with the knowledge that as things stood, he was closing the gap on David in the overall standings. A minute 17 down and still on the descent was Barry, who was unable to go with the leader's pace and had lost 40 seconds on Chris in the last half lap. While behind him, the 1991 junior champion Richard Thackeray was using the descents as an opportunity to catch up on some of the grounds he had lost during the climb. John Clay, who had been with him, had punctured, and on this sort of course that meant Richard probably couldn't see any other riders ahead or behind him, which makes pacing yourself very hard.
Come on, Barry. Come on, Barry.
As Barry headed across the burn, the strain on his face signified that he wasn't comfortable. Like Tim Davis, he hadn't gotten over his midweek return from the World Cup in America. The climb up Crib Law spread out what had been till then a close field, though Adrian had managed to hold the gap to Richard at just 38 seconds, which after the long fire track climb was not a great surprise from the former Tour de France rider. And in case you're wondering, those are midges in front of the camera. David, meanwhile, was systematically working his way through the field and had just moved into 6th ahead of Paul Dixon, but he wasn't making much of a dent on the time difference, having reduced the deficit by only 25 seconds to 3 minutes 43, though Paul looked like he would be hard pushed to stay with David. When the lead women came through the same point about 15 minutes later, Sally was still out front, but behind her, Shana moved into 2nd and closed the gap on the leader to just 15 seconds. Sally may have been unaware of what was happening behind her when she was in the woods, but approaching 8 House Burn, she realised from the crowd that Sian was closing fast. And with Sally in her sights, Sian went on the offensive. Helen had dropped off Sian's wheel on the descent and was also trying to get back into the fray. Halfway up the first climb on the women's third and final lap, and not surprisingly, Sian had taken the lead, with Helen also moving ahead of an exhausted-looking Sally, though barring mechanicals, Sal was securing third with a 4-minute cushion over Michelle. The stiff rider was more concerned with trying to stay away from Angela Ward and Jackie Fletcher, who were only a minute behind. Not far behind, the men were also on their final lap, and before the season started, I asked Chris what his 93 aims were.
The 7-Up Series is a big aim, and the national championships. So that's what I'm really going for.
Where do you think you could improve your overall riding then?
Well, technically I'm not that good. So I've got to work on that a lot more. I realise that. I'm feeling good in myself, you know, I'm getting stronger every year. So I think I can improve.
The 3 rally riders were now back together in third, but making no impression on the leading pair. Barry would no doubt be grateful for any tow from his teammates, as he had obviously blown, though behind them Richard didn't look in much of a condition to capitalise on it. However, Richard's teammate was looking almost as fresh as when she started. That's what leading a race can do for you. Behind, Helen had given up the chase and slipped back nearly 3 minutes, as she too tired and started to make mistakes. As Sian finished, she became the first rider in either the women's or men's category to win 2 National Point Series races this season, which sets her up well for the series overall. While Sally will have to take comfort from the fact that the strength is still there to get her to the front, but she needs the stamina to stay there. True to form, Chris was also strong on the final lap and opened his lead to nearly 3 minutes over the Diamondback rider, and showed how much talent there is in British mountain biking by becoming the 5th winner out of 5 races this season, and more importantly, taking his first national win on fat tyres. Sally finishing in third behind him. Yet again, David had put in a supreme effort that had moved him back up to third, but no more, while Adrian clung to his rear wheel to get fourth. Barry had obviously been too tired to stay with them, having blown for the first time ever in a mountain bike race. And when you're that tired, silly mistakes come all too easily. Barry's troubles had brought him into the view of Richard, who made a final charge to try and pick up an extra place, though the rally rider managed to stay away by just 9 seconds.
It was hard work out there today. It was quite a short race, I think, wasn't it, compared to the other races in the series, but my last lap surge came in handy yet again.
Well, you were very strong on that last lap.
Yeah, I made quite a gap on my left. I dropped Sally on the first single track bit, and I think Helen was with me until about 3/4 of the way up the run next to the fence, and I dropped her there. I didn't see her after that, but I didn't know where anybody was, so I kept on going like mad.
I apparently had about 50 seconds at the end of the first lap, and possibly I should have just, maybe worked together with the others. But I thought, I actually got the gap on the running section. It was effortless really. I was running up that by the fence and I looked back and there's nobody there, so I thought I'd better hang on, but maybe I should have worked together. Apparently the other 2 were working together into the wind and that sort of thing.
Got a good start and felt strong from the start, and I knew that if I sort of paced myself right, I could do a good ride today. The course suited me and everything, so I just went for it.
I'm pleased with that. I've had I can drop my 4th place now. I've actually got a 1, 2 and 3 placings to go forward now, plus the final, so I'm in quite a strong position. I'm pleased with that.
David, you must be pretty fed up.
Yeah, I'm sort of like end of my tether now. Sort of six races and 8 punctures now, so pretty fed up about it all.
Barry seemed to be going through a spate of punctures, and you seem to have taken over from him, don't
Yeah, he's sort of like weathered the storm now and got through it, and he's sort of passed it on to me. But you do go through phases like that.
you? You don't think it's the tyres you're using, do you?
Well, it's exactly the same tyres as last year, and the same inner tube, so everything's the same really. It's just a sort of bit of bad luck really, I think, at the moment.
Chris took his first national win with the most comfortable win of the season, and even increased his lead over the charging Baker. And that keeps it wide open as the men head into the last round. Yet another impressive ride showed that Sian has come to form in the latter half of the season, and after finishing second in the series for the last 5 years, she takes an 8-point lead into the final, which could at last give her the title. Next week we're off to Shrewsbury for the final round of the 7-Up BMBF National Downhill Series.